Hello, everyone. Welcome to Travel Light, and it's your friend, Dr. Unoma. I hope you guys are doing well. I am saying hello from sunny Scotland. It's okay, it's never sunny. That was a lie. But I hope you're really well. It's the best time of the year, guys. November. Well, October is the best time because it's my birthday month. But November, it's the fall season, autumn season. All the leaves are kind of coming down, and before you know it, it's Christmas time again. So just a good one. But I really hope you're well. I wanted to introduce myself to you guys. Of course, I've started this podcast, Travel Light. It's not about traveling. This is a place where we can really navigate what it means to move through life and journey through life, working out or walking out the promises that Jesus has for us in terms of our mental and emotional well-being, being able to build resilience and learn how we can, I guess, build a beautiful culture within our souls, and when we're well. But anyway, wanted to give you kind of an insight to who I am and, the journey that led me up to here thus far. I am, you probably guessed it, I am a Nigerian, now Scot, so Afro Scot, as they say. I've been in Scotland for almost 20 years now. It's a wonderful place. But I was actually born in Nigeria. Again, I'm not 20. Maybe I could be 20. But I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, to Nigerian family, Igbo family. My mom and dad were both, or are both, sort of sciencey people. So my dad trained as a pharmacist. My mom trained as a doctor, specialized in internal medicine and dermatology. And so growing up, of course, you want to be like your mom, you want to be like your dad. And to be honest, did I really have a choice? Look, you're the dad of the family, first daughter. You get good grades, you're going to be a doctor. So you can kind of pave the way for the rest, right? So that's how it started. So I actually didn't want to do medicine initially. So I decided I was going to be a doctor like mommy. Sort of going through high school, I began to develop other interests, slash wanted to kind of do my own thing. And there was a bit of rebellion there. And I wasn't sure I wanted to do medicine anymore. I thought about engineering, of all things. I don't even know what that is, to be honest with you, but hey ho. And then, I do other things. I am a musician, sort of a singer-songwriter, and I wanted to pursue that. But anyway, long story short, dad says, Unoma, why don't you just go to university, do the medicine, and then you can do what you want after. Well, as they say, it was a scam because I'm still here. I'm still here doing medicine. But the point being, I went to medical school. So at that point, I had moved to Glasgow, Scotland. I went to University of Glasgow, and I did my university degree. It was obviously intense, but it was fun. I do enjoy learning, so it was wonderful. But anyway, in our university, in the third and fourth year, you had the opportunity to go anywhere in the world really to pursue what was called an elective. So what this was basically was an opportunity to go and, I guess, shadow any specialty in the world. So anything, you could be neurology, it could be dermatology, it could be internal medicine, accident and emergency. So at that point, I had this really keen interest in the brain. I just found it so fascinating. The fact that one person could have a stroke, another person have again a stroke, but they would have different presentations because depending on the portion of the brain that was affected, their symptoms would be different. So I just loved how well mapped the brain was, and I just found it very interesting. So I thought, look, I'm going to go to Nigeria since I can go spend time with the family, get some jollof rice, hey, hey. And at the same time, also kind of, explore this neurology thing. So got a really wonderful hookup with a neurologist in Luth, which is the sort of big hospital in Lagos, with a doctor who was amazing. I spent 5 weeks there. It was a big culture shock for me. They used to call me Glasgow, because they just thought I was just, yeah, they just thought I was just not serious because I wasn't from sort of, Lagos and things. But it was wonderful. I learned so much. But it was very different in the way that clinics were run here, in that, we were all kind of packed into one room. So that's like 5 students and 4 junior doctors, and then a consultant and a patient, and everyone's kind of crammed in trying to learn from a consultation. So with neurology, things you'd expect: strokes. You'd expect things like headaches and vertigo, dizziness, all that kind of stuff that makes sense when you think about the brain and how what the brain does for the body. So we got that stuff coming through the clinic. So obviously very interesting. I'm like, trying to figure out what portion of the brain is involved in this symptom and things. But I started sort of getting a bit, what's going on here? When patients would come in with symptoms that just didn't really make sense. So one of the things that would come up during sort of clinics and patients' complaints would be, Madam, I have an internal itch. I have an internal heat. And I'm like, that's not a thing. Where is it mapping in the brain? It didn't really make sense to me. So I'm trying to figure out what part of the brain is involved in this symptom. And the doctor then starts asking questions about their mood. So she'd be like, so what's your mood like? Are you depressed? Are you low? When's the last time you were happy? What's your sex life like? What is your appetite like? How's your sleep? And the first time she did that, honestly, I was so confused. I was like, that's got nothing to do with neurology. Like, where are we going with this kind of thing? But it was interesting with the first patient I have in mind where she asked those questions. Those questions were so on point. And in fact, what the patient came in was an understanding that something wasn't right. They felt this heat in their body. They're trying to figure out what was wrong, with their body. But actually, what was going on was that they were depressed. They were dealing with a clinical depression. And to borrow a phrase from our wonderful, my fellow millennials, the depression was in a sense manifesting in their body. And that was my first introduction to how the brain, the mind, and the body, they're all kind of connected, and you can't really separate them. And you can't really have health if your mental health isn't on point. So that was not the only patient that I came across, during that 5-week stint in Luth. There were other people who came in. I remember there's this lady that came in with an issue with being able to turn her neck. In fact, it appeared that it was jammed at one point. She couldn't move it. But every so often, she would sort of have these tremors in her neck. And I was like, this is not fitting in with the brain. What is going on? But I remember sitting down with her, and I took a really detailed history from her and things. And actually, when we got down to nitty gritty, there was a lot of sort of trauma in her family home. There was ongoing, abuse, from her husband, and she was having a lot of anxiety at the time. And she never said she was anxious. That never came out from her mouth as a problem. Whereas her issue was that her neck wasn't moving and she wasn't sure what was going on. So even though this anxiety, was going on and she hadn't acknowledged it, her body still acknowledged it, and it came through in the way she presented in the clinic. So I just found that really interesting, but kind of packed that in a file in my brain somewhere. And I was like, that was good. Enjoyed my time in Lagos. Then came back, did another elective also in Lagos, but this time in obstetrics and gynecology. So this is to do with sort of babies being born and sort of lady bits and things like that. To say I was traumatized doesn't quite cover what that specialty was like for me. Not that it's wonderful. Obviously, babies are beautiful and things like that. But wow, all that pain and the screaming in labor ward. Anyway, so left that alone and didn't think very much of it. But finished medical school, and after you finish your degree, you have this opportunity to, not opportunity, it's mandated. You then had to work as a foundation doctor. So you have 2 years working in foundation medicine, where the point of it is that you start to build your own, start practicing in a hospital and going into the vocation. So all the stuff you've learned in medical school, you then begin to practice, in the real world, real patients and things. So the first year you do your medicine, you do your surgery, and maybe you could do maybe some people do psychiatry now, but that's usually what you do. And then your second year and foundation years, it's, I guess, you can do more specialty based things. So in FY2, as we call it, I did 4 months of general practice, which was wonderful. It was great. I did dermatology and other things. But anyway, after FY2 or during FY2, you have to start thinking about your future. What am I going to do? What specialty am I going to choose? Now, I thought by this point I would know exactly who I was and what I was supposed to do, but I had absolutely no clue. We get this portal where you start applying for things, and I was applying for everything in the world. I applied for internal medicine. I applied for acute medicine. I applied for public health. I applied for microbiology. I applied for general practice. And I was like, oh, yeah, there's a psychiatry thing. Let me just click on that too. I had no idea. And if you're a fellow doctor, you understand how crazy that was. The broad range. The only thing I said I wasn't going to do was surgery because I was like, that's just not for me. Anyway, there was a whole thing with my application. It didn't actually go through because of the chaos in my applications and stuff. It's a longer story, but for the sake of this podcast, and not to bore you to tears, I will just summarize it. Anyway, so long story short, I got a job in general practice, and I was like, this is good, got a future ahead of me, and I actually really enjoy general practice. And whilst I was working there, an opportunity came to apply for the second round of psychiatry. So I thought, you know what, actually, let me just apply again, because that first application didn't go through. So sent my application in, and then I was like, they were like, oh, you've been invited to an interview. I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's cool. I'm just going to go because you get the day off, get to Dundee, and then why not? So went for my interview, did all that, and then got an offer. And I was like, whoa. So I have an offer with general practice, an offer with psychiatry. And I'm like, right, I'm sure this is a good problem to have, but I actually don't know what I'm going to do now. So at the time in general practice, I mean, it's wonderful. You see a whole range of things. You see the problems with the legs, the problems with the kidneys, to, people who've had strokes in the past, depressed people, anxiety and stuff. So it's all really, you get a good experience and get to see all manner of people. And I guess build relationships with patients because they're coming to you and you're the doctor kind of thing. But I remember the patients I really enjoyed consultations with were the ones who had problems with their, mental health. And I just found it so interesting. People coming with like low mood and problems with their eating and, maybe history with previous suicides and depression or self-harm and things like that. But I really got frustrated with the whole 10-minute thing. I was like, how am I going to get through a consultation and ask all the questions I'm really curious about in 10 minutes? So that was one of the deciders for me. I thought in psychiatry, I actually would get to like sit with a patient for an hour, like amazing. So anyway, after like kind of much deliberation, and I remember sitting down with my pastor and praying, I was like, actually, I think psychiatry is the way to go. So did my training in psychiatry. So my core training, which, you get to explore different subspecialties in psychiatry. Who would have known, It's just not the one thing. And eventually I thought, actually, I really like forensic psychiatry, which is the branch that kind of deals with offenders and people who have sort of, violent pasts and things like that. So that's where I ended. So I am now working in the NHS as a consultant forensic psychiatrist, which is, again, is great. I think I am built for that in many ways. But anyway, so that's kind of my journey and how I eventually ended up in psychiatry. When I think back, I'm like, I'm not really sure if I would have enjoyed the other specialties like I do now. But more and more, though, I see sort of the interplay between sort of the mind and the body and how connected they are, But anyway, so that's my sort of professional life, so to speak. But as I have already alluded to in what I said earlier, and also my other intro video, I am a follower of Jesus. I am a lover of Jesus, and I've been a believer for pretty much all my life. I think everyone can relate to being born into a Christian family. Like when people ask you, so what is your salvation story? I'm like, hold on. I think I was 6 and an auntie said you should give your life to Jesus, kind of thing. But anyway, so that was kind of my story. I grew up in a Christian home. Thank you, mom and dad. And, kind of fast forward, I guess, you know how it is. You do the things you need to do read your Bible, pray every day if you want to grow. You know that so maxim. And that was kind of all I thought about Christianity. But kind of get into my kind of my time in university, I did face some adversity, which I'll maybe speak to you guys about one day. It's really interesting, and I would say an interesting story. Um, and I basically was faced with this thing where I had to really begin to learn what it meant to be like saved. Like, what is this Jesus thing? Anyway, and the Lord started to reveal Himself to me. He showed Himself as provider at that point, and I remember getting baptized in the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, whoa, what is this? Like, who's kept this from me all my life? I remember like my life changing, after that a lot, because it was like a whole new world, kind of opened up to me. But anyway, kind of moving on from that, and in the past, I guess I've been qualified now for 13 years. Um, I've been growing again in my faith, growing in my love for the Lord and of the Lord. And I am just still blown away, still surprised almost every time the Lord shows up. I'm like, He's just not what I thought He was like. Um, I was kind of saying just there that when you're growing up and you watch these Jesus movies, um, apart from Passion of the Christ, most Jesus movies when you're younger that they were showing Good Friday, Jesus was just really this sedate man who just had this everything together, and he had this robe on, and he was just pretty serious. And then of course he suffered on the cross and died and stuff. And I remember very more recently, the Chosen series came out. If you haven't, you do need to go watch it. I haven't finished everything. I have watched a good portion of season 1, and I am like, so he's so different, in that series. He's fun, and he winks at his friends, and he has fun with them, and he like makes jokes, and Jesus is just like, yeah. But in a way, I guess that depiction of Jesus almost confirmed how he had begun to show himself to me in my own sort of personal walk with him. I am just so blown away by how kind the Lord is, and how good He is, and how patient. I think that's the other thing that I still get confused about, because the idea of a man in the sky with sort of koboko in his hand about to whoosh, whip you if you get everything or get anything wrong, as opposed to who He's showing me to be, where He's like a dad, and he's just like, He just so wants you to do well, and so wants you to see what He's put into you, to become all you can be. But anyway, more than anything, I guess relevant to this podcast is His kindness and the goodness of His nature. And I've become more and more convinced, especially in the encounters I've had with Him, and also, even in my practice, that He wants you to be well. Like, Jesus really, really cares about your emotional health, your mental health. And it is really important to Him. And he said in John 10:10, one of my favorite scriptures, He says that He came that we might have life, and life more abundantly. Another version says life to the full. And I'm like, wow, that is, when we don't rush past that scripture and we sit down there and it's like, what is He actually saying? Life, like life, not dullness and, oh, I guess we have to get through it till, we get to heaven. No, it's like He wants us to thrive here on earth. And that includes how we are doing internally, how our internal world, is thriving, you know. And whenever I think about, we read the Gospels, and again, kind of watching series like The Chosen, Jesus did walk in uninterrupted joy. He had the fullness of measure of the Spirit, and the kingdom of God is love and joy and peace, and joy is part of Him. He was full of life. He walked in joy. But at the same time, He demonstrated how much He cared about humanity not just dying on the cross. I say just as if it was a small thing. Not only dying on the cross, but when before he went through the passion, as he walked on earth with us, he dwelt among us. He was so um, he cared and he empathized with human suffering, didn't judge it, but in fact would come low and experience the stuff that we were experiencing in the midst of our dirt. And, you think about, when Jesus lost his friend Lazarus, and, obviously Lazarus' family were in grief. They were so completely devastated by what had happened. They'd lost their family member. And Jesus, even though he knew the outcome of the event, he knew, being the resurrection and the life, that Lazarus was going to come back, he still wept with them. He still came low and said, I feel your pain and I'm going to be with you in this pain. So I'm just so convinced about how much he cares and how he hasn't changed. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So I do know more than anything that Jesus cares so much about mental health. And it's a shame. I feel that it's my experience, and I'm happy to be convinced otherwise. But in my time in the church, the you know what I mean? How you doing? Yeah, the Lord is my strength. And we have these weird stock phrases that we use and pretend that everything is okay when actually it's not. Look, I understand faith speak. I am a faith girl as well. But when we live in denial and we pretend that nothing is going on, actually we remove that ability, we remove that opportunity for Jesus to come and show himself or express himself in a different way that we've seen him, because we just shut him out and say everything is fine. So that my experience of mental health in the church is that we are not very good at talking about it. And I think it's still a problem, you know? So I came across this stat recently. It was saying, well, yeah, it was a stat that 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health challenge at some point in their lives. And when we think about that, when we think, oh yeah, that's just for the heathen. But it's like, no, that stat is everybody, you know. Not to say too much, but we may know even somebody who was saved, who took their own life. That is something that's happened before. That's something we've seen. So the crisis, as I will call it, the mental health crisis that we have seen, and we are seeing and experiencing, is palpable. We know that it's going on in the world around us. Doesn't just affect everybody else. It does involve us as well. So I do think it's time for the church to wake up to what is a growing problem, and understand that Jesus has a solution for that. So I started this podcast, guys, so we can have these conversations. Let's explore what that looks like. What does Jesus actually think about mental health? I hope I have convinced you today that, or maybe I haven't, there'll be more content coming, convince you that Jesus actually does care about mental health, and actually he doesn't judge you for having your struggles. Rather, he wants you to allow him space in that, so that actually he gets to show himself to you as the good shepherd that he is. So let's travel light together, guys. This is what this podcast is all about. And before I go, I really want to know from you guys. I want to hear from you guys. Do you think actually we don't talk about mental health in the church? Do you think we pay attention to it? Is this something I would just kind of brush under the carpet in the name of faith speak? It's all good. The Lord is with me, etc., etc. Let me know. And if you have any personal stories and you obviously feel comfortable sharing, sort of drop them down in the comments and let's have a conversation together, and let's kind of let's learn from each other in this wee community. And if you have enjoyed, in fact, sorry, before I say that, if you disagree with me, please also drop a comment sort of down below and let me know what you think. And yeah, let's grow together. And if you have enjoyed this video, please like it and share with somebody, share with a pal, a brother who would benefit from it and what I've had to say today. And one more thing, please subscribe to the channel. It means that when new content comes through, you'll be the first to know, and you can kind of keep up with what we're doing here in Travel Light. And till the next time I see you, be blessed and continue to travel light. Peace out.